And we begin with Mitt Romney, candidate of the common day trader, as he shores up his key constituency, big business fat cats and Wall Street financiers. And in just a couple of hours, Mr. Romney will be courting a finance reception in Cincinnati. This after his midday business roundtable in Washington. Look at that. Romney's base, bunch of well-fed men in suits feeding at the trough. And Romney began his remarks with a rare statement involving some elements of truth.
This is a critical time for the country, and I think a choice is before us as to what kind of America we're going to live in. I think this election is a watershed election, which will determine the relationship between citizen and enterprise and government.
Citizen and enterprise and government. Yes, very well said. Unfortunately, though he was in town, JP Morgan chief Jamie Dimon could not attend the roundtable. No, he was too busy testifying before the Senate Banking Committee, part of an investigation into his company's recent $2 billion loss. And I guess that hearing on the catastrophic trading screw-up is not exactly the best of optics for Mitt Romney, who staked his financial strategy on less Wall Street regulation, as he made clear again today.
I will halt all the Obama-era regulations. I'm also going to put in place a policy that no agency of government can add regulations without removing equal and opposite regulations.
So, if you want financial regulation, say goodbye to clean water, I guess. Romney then took questions, but only after the pesky national media was kicked out of the room.
The governor is going to remain here while we say goodbye to our friends from the press. Goodbye.
Do you remember when Romney said he only wanted to discuss wealth disparity in quiet rooms? That's what he means, yes. He doesn't quite warm up to the media like the president, who spoke out on Wall Street and Mr. Dimon quite succinctly last month with the ladies of The View.
JP Morgan is one of the best managed banks there is. Jamie Dimon, the head of it, is one of the smartest backers we got. And they still lost $2 billion in counting. This is why we passed Wall Street reform. The whole point was, even if you're smart, you can make mistakes.
Yes, anyone can make mistakes, even absurd ones, which Mitt Romney continues to prove, as with his remarks on public payrolls on Tuesday.
Well, that's a very strange accusation. Of course, teachers and firemen and policemen are hired at the local level and also by states. The federal government doesn't pay for teachers, firefighters or policemen. So obviously that's completely absurd.
Now listen, he was only off by billions of dollars, 11% of the country's public school costs, thousands of police jobs and millions in federal emergency grants, all paid for by the federal government. But anyone can make a mistake. And you know what? Wall Street can relate, Mitt. You are their man, and they've shown it, to the tune of 37 million Wall Street dollars to the president's 4.8 million. That doesn't even count the $10 million check just shelled out by casino magnate Sheldon Adelson to the leading pro-Romney super PAC. And I'm sure that doesn't come with any strings attached. Let's bring in our political panel now. In Washington, Ken Vogel, chief investigative reporter for Politico, and Washington Post columnist Dana Milbank, and here in New York, MSNBC contributor Joy Reid, who's the managing editor of thegrio.com. Ken, the excellence of your reporting is before us once again, with you pointing out that Wall Street has literally dumped its love affair with the president and fallen for Mitt Romney. So the 7-year itch is reduced to just 3. I guess they've forgotten that freewheeling lack of regulation brought the country to its knees.
Well, it's not just the regulation, which, of course, has increased under the Obama administration in the form of the Dodd-Frank overhaul, but it's also the president's plan to raise taxes on the wealthy and fear among Wall Street types, particularly hedge funders, that he'll do away with this so-called carried interest provision that has allowed Mitt Romney to continue to profit from his holdings in Bain Capital and pay a relatively low tax rate on it. Additionally, the president has engaged in a lot of aggressive rhetoric towards Wall Street, targeting it. Wall Street fat cats, we've heard that a lot from the president and his campaign. And Wall Streeters, frankly, are just not happy about that. And they do, like you said, Martin, see one of their own in Mitt Romney, someone who will do away with some of the regulations in Dodd-Frank, as he said, who will oppose increased taxes on the wealthy. And so it makes sense for them to back him.
Indeed, Dana, Sheldon Adelson is placing his $10,000 bet with Mitt Romney now, the biggest ever made to Romney's super PAC. But, of course, Mr. Adelson won't be demanding any kind of influence over the Arab-Israeli conflict, just like Karl Rove won't influence any policies, despite his heading a $100 million super PAC. Is that right?
No, of course not, Martin. You know, what's an extra $10 million here or there? But,
right.
Now, he gave a larger sum to Newt Gingrich in opposition to Mitt Romney, so he's still got a deficit of $10 million or so to make up. So I doubt that this is the last we'll hear from him, but that's the reality of this obscene campaign fundraising cycle, that, you know, you can go out and raise $2,500 for your candidacy, or some guy who's with a wink and a nod can give $10 million.
Yeah, it's great. Joyanne, the other thing that happened was that Romney decided that he was going to take some questions at the Business Roundtable, but he kicked the press out. Now, he's delayed filing his tax returns. He doesn't like to disclose his own financial details. And this man has a problem with transparency, doesn't he? I mean, he's running for president. Why doesn't he just take a few questions?
Quiet rooms, Martin. Quiet rooms. It's very important. You know, Mitt Romney, I think partly he doesn't want to make any mistakes. This is a very careful campaign. He doesn't want to say anything out of school because it tends to happen when he tries to ad-lib. It doesn't go well. So I think part of the reason is that he wants to be able to talk openly with business leaders and wealthy individuals who he wants to give him money about what he'd do, none of which will be good for his campaign among independents and people that he wants to win over in the election.
Ken, to Joy's point, wasn't that what he did at that Palm Beach fundraiser, where he was secretly caught by our embed, Garrett Hake, talking about what he would do, like close the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce. But, of course, he never says that publicly because he knows if he starts doing that, that isn't really going to be very impressive to the voter.
Yeah, you got to be really careful these days on the campaign trail, including in these
careful about
meetings
telling
with
the truth,
fundraisers.
Ken. Careful about telling the truth.
Careful about how you target your message.
Telling the truth. Is that a problem, Ken?
It's framing, and
framing?
You know, what he said there is not entirely different from what he said on the campaign trail. He's a little more blunt and more candid. You expect that with your supporters. However, this expectation that what you say in private will not make its way into public, I think, is pretty much out the window at this point. And you express your own, you express your sort of private, candid thoughts to your donors or your supporters at your peril, as President Obama saw in 2008 when he talked about these bitter voters clinging to their guns and religion. Well, that got out and it really hurt him.
Yeah, but that wasn't a policy.
Well.
Yeah, but that wasn't a policy, Ken. However, let me go to Dana for a moment. We know that Romney only likes to talk about wealth disparity in quiet rooms, but today he was out front talking about the wealthy moving their money offshore. Take a listen, Dana.
I want to see lower tax rates. It makes no sense to me that we have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. I know what that will do. I've been in business. Slowly but surely, enterprises will move to places that have lower taxes, or you'll recognize your income in places that have lower taxes.
Yeah, like he has. Swiss bank accounts, the Cayman Islands. Isn't that what he's done?
The government, Martin, is forcing him to move his money to Grand Cayman and to Switzerland. Don't make them force me to put my money in a Swiss bank account. But look, I mean, he's got that certain record built up here, and this is how he's going to overcome it. I was at the Jamie Dimon hearing this morning, and a lot of that was the same. And they're all basically saying, aren't these Dodd-Frank regulations going to drive business overseas? And even Jamie Dimon, who's no friend of the administration, was saying, well, not really in our case.
OK. Joy Reid, Ken Vogel, Dana Milbank.